Welcome to part 3. So far we've seen a wide range of significant red flags from Mal. Let's continue with the third clip.
I sought therapy for us because I believed that I wanted a renegotiation, and without help, he wasn't going to take my opinion with as much respect or weight as his own. I bring things to you that mean a lot to me, and you are very...
dismissive?
Yeah.
If we were right at the beginning of an analysis, we would need to be very cautious of taking Annie at her word here. However, at this point we've seen repeated instances of Mal being dismissive and condescending, not just towards Annie but also towards Orna, the therapist. So I think it's fairly safe to take what Annie's saying at face value. These would therefore be more red flags for Mal, that he doesn't take Annie's opinion with as much respect or weight as his own, and that when she brings things to him that mean a lot to her, he's very dismissive. This shows a lack of empathy, manipulative behaviour, haughtiness, and a lack of accountability for his role as a partner in the relationship. So if we were right at the beginning of an analysis, we wouldn't know what the true dynamic between the partners was in a situation like this. For example, it may have been the case that Annie was a narcissist and Mal was her browbeaten victim. In that case, Annie saying she wanted a renegotiation through therapy would have been the act of a narcissist trying to assert even more control over their victim. But having seen what we have, I think it's highly likely that the situation we're seeing is Annie as the victim of a narcissist slowly reaching her limit after decades of putting up with the narcissist's behaviour. And she's seeking a renegotiation of the relationship as a desperate bid to save it, because she can't get through to Mal any other way, and he won't listen to her.
Do you recognize any of this kind of...
I understand why she feels this way.
No, but do you recognize that in yourself?
I recognize why she sees that. So I know what she's talking about.
Yeah.
But it'd be like me, telling you what one side of this is, and then thinking it's the whole side. No, I got it, yeah. If you look at it that way, that's what you're going to see. If you look at it a different way, you'll see something else.
Right.
So Mal isn't agreeing that he's dismissive towards Annie. He seems to be saying that although his behaviour could be viewed as dismissive from her perspective, it needs to be looked at from a wider perspective. In other words, from his viewpoint, he isn't being dismissive. We're yet to hear what this viewpoint is, that Mal believes justifies the way he talks to Annie, but on the face of it, this is a red flag. Mal is rejecting accountability for something we've actually seen him do on multiple occasions. This is evidence of the narcissistic perspective. As a victim's narcissist, you can view the exact same situation as the narcissist, and yet you both come away with a radically different understanding of what actually happened. It can be extremely frustrating for the victim, who thinks, surely they're messing with me, they can't honestly believe that's what happened. But they do. Their narcissism has rewritten history in their mind, and they can be just as indignant as you are, because in their mind it's you that can't see the reality of the situation. Narcissists have a distortion lens which bends their perception of reality to whatever it needs to be in order to get the prime aims, control over others, an emotional reaction from others, also known as fuel, character traits to acquire, and residual benefits. If Mal is a narcissist, and I think it's highly likely that he is, his narcissism wouldn't be doing a very good job if he suddenly realised, oh, Annie's got a point there, I am dismissive, maybe I should stop talking down to her. Because now he's just relinquished control of the situation, and he's thrown away one of the most important manipulations that he uses to control her, dismissiveness. That would be a massive own goal. So instead, the narcissism would cause him to think, well, it might sound as if I'm being dismissive, but actually I've got a damn good reason to act this way. This alternative view of objective reality would therefore be the narcissistic perspective, and in my personal experience, it's a very reliable indicator of a narcissist.
If you look at it a different way, you'll see something else.
Right. Okay. So
And
wait, stop.
Absolutely.
So this is exactly what I was talking about. I'll say don't say that. That's mean. And then the other side. So here's the one side is that's mean. Those are ugly words you're throwing at me, or like making me feel small. But the other side is that you can't wait to show me is what a great and supportive husband you are, and how supportive and da-da, which just makes my side irrelevant, which is your whole point of doing it.
If what Annie's saying is true, which I think is likely at this point, Mao is mean, throws ugly words at her, and makes her feel small. It's likely that these are devaluing manipulations, insulting and belittling her in order to assert control over her and draw an emotional reaction to provide him with fuel. This behaviour would show a lack of empathy, and when Annie tells him that he's being mean, his response is to say what a great and supportive husband he is. Again, this sounds like the interaction between a narcissist and their victim. If that was the case, Annie calling Mao's behaviour out would be challenging his sense of control, and he would be nullifying that threat to control with manipulative behaviour. He brings up things he did in the past as a way to deflect from and justify his current behaviour. It's an attempt to guilt Annie in order to shut her up. She doesn't have a right to complain about his behaviour because of all the great things he's done for her in the past. It's triangulation with past events. If Mao genuinely thinks that talking down to Annie is justified by what a great and supportive husband he is, this would be more strong evidence of the narcissistic perspective, as well as contradictory behaviour, because it would mean that he's unable to see that regularly belittling his partner and making them feel small would preclude him from being this supposed great and supportive husband, because it isn't the behaviour of a supportive partner. It seems as if we're starting to pick up on a pattern in Mao's behaviour. Recall from part 1, where he explained that the reason that he wasn't happy with the party Annie was planning for his birthday, and ultimately the reason he cancelled it at the last minute and jetted off to Italy alone, was that he felt it wasn't enough after him having been Mr. Amazing for 25 years. Now we're getting a second piece of information which is again suggesting that Mao thinks his devaluing treatment of Annie is justified by him being a good husband. This would show a grandiosity in his self-perception, a sense of entitlement, a lack of accountability for his role as a partner, a lack of boundaries, a lack of empathy, manipulative behaviour, the narcissistic perspective, and contradictory behaviour. As you can see, if this is the case, it's a huge red flag.
Which just makes my side irrelevant, which is your whole point of doing it.
Baby, that was a terrible example.
As in previous parts, we see Mao jump in with his customary dismissiveness. It's like clockwork. Annie giving her opinion seems to threaten Mao's control, and rather than considering it fairly, there's a knee-jerk dismissive put-down from him. It's almost comical that 30 seconds ago, Mao was completely denying that he's dismissive. Then the very next thing Annie says, he dismisses in a haughty way. It's contradictory behaviour. And once again, it's such obvious behaviour with no facade or shame. Mao simply can't see that his behaviour is unreasonable, and talking down to his partner like this is not a good look. This would again be in line with the behaviour of a lesser narcissist, somebody who doesn't have a good ability to comprehend or care how other people perceive him.
Baby, that was a terrible example.
You are being mean to me.
I already said I understand why you feel that way.
But you don't. You
Yeah, I know I do.
absolutely
I
don't.
still do.
But okay, but if
I
you
did when I said it, and I still do. I
okay,
haven't
then
lost track
so
of it.
what part of that is on you? Like,
Can you play
But
back
what just say, what part is on you?
Well, there isn't a part. Look, it can happen in certain situations, but the constant in those other situations is the way that you're approaching it.
Mao refuses to accept that he plays any part in Annie getting upset with the way he talks to her. When asked about the part he plays, he says, well, there isn't a part. Instead, he lays the blame squarely on Annie, saying that when it does happen, quote, the constant in those situations is the way you're approaching it. His reaction is consistent with the way a narcissist might behave. There was an attempt to pin accountability on him, which would be a threat to his control. This was nullified with manipulations. A denial followed quickly by blame shifting.
Okay, well, that's a dynamic. That's a couple dynamic. I mean, you're saying to Annie, look, there's a part that is yours, which is the way you approach me.
Mm-hmm.
What part's yours?
But say, and here's where I can meet you. Here's my part.
Look, I'm struggling to find what that is, because you're
Come
right.
on, you can.
No, I'm being sincere. When you already have it, it's not missing from your relationship.
Just say it again.
Mao is point blank refusing to take any accountability. And I do sympathise with the therapist, Orna, seemingly getting a bit frustrated here. Because Mao's part in the conflict must be so obvious to anybody observing the situation. But this is what happens when you come up against the narcissistic perspective. It can feel as if you're having to argue that the sky is blue with somebody who's vehemently claiming it's green.
Just say it again. Even if you're doing that effort, you can just say, here's what I'm trying to do.
Here's what I'm already successful at doing.
That's not the same thing.
Orna turns the request down a notch and just attempts to get Mao to say what he's already trying to do to avoid the conflicts. But again, Mao can't accept that he might not already be perfect. Trying is implying that he's not succeeding. He passive-aggressively says, here's what I'm already successful at doing. It's grandiose, haughty, and continues to show a lack of accountability. To state the obvious, it's going to be impossible to make any progress in therapy if he's incapable of admitting that there is anything that he isn't already doing perfectly. His attitude once again shows his lack of facade. A mid-range narcissist would generally be able to recognize that the correct thing to do in this situation would be to show that they know they aren't perfect, and that they're willing to change. This is because maintaining their image to the world of being a kind, caring person is important to them. So they might say something like, oh yes, I can absolutely be too sharp in my tone sometimes. I need to work on that. It wouldn't be genuine accountability because they would still believe that they're entirely justified in the way they behave, so there wouldn't actually be any long-term change for the better. But they would at least make a show of taking accountability and hold out the possibility of future change, unlike Mao.
I think you'll get way more traction if you say, rather than say, I've been doing it all this time, is if you say, I can try harder to not be dismissive. What triggers me is when you talk to me in this way or that way, but I still want to keep making the effort to be respectful.
Yeah, that's insulting.
To whom?
To me. It's a ridiculous thing to say.
So Mao finds the suggestion of him saying he can try harder not to be dismissive or make an effort to be respectful insulting and a ridiculous thing to say. Is this rather extreme reaction a nullification of a threat to control in trying to pin him with accountability by playing the victim and using dismissiveness yet again? Now I think you could argue that Orna is being quite confrontational with Mao here. It's extremely likely that he's a narcissist, and therefore this approach won't work, because it just challenges his sense of control, and therefore means that he has to reassert control over her. But then again, no approach is going to work with a narcissist in the long run. Couples therapy is at best pointless when a narcissist is involved. They're not going to change. And in fact, the therapy sessions are just giving the narcissist an additional channel through which they can manipulate and abuse their victim.
Bear that insult. It'll be good for your marriage.
No, I won't do it, and I don't want it. If you were to give me everything I ever wanted by doing that, I'd say no. I'd rather have nothing than have that.
As we've seen throughout the series so far, Mao is refusing to give an inch. It would be so easy for him to give a small concession here and say, okay, yes, maybe very occasionally I lose my temper just a little bit. But the fact that he's denying the obvious reality of the situation so vehemently and stubbornly does show evidence of a hypersensitivity to threats to control and the narcissistic perspective. What he says here is manipulative. He's exaggerating and being somewhat melodramatic, claiming that he wouldn't admit to doing anything wrong even in exchange for everything he ever wanted. And that's the end of the clip. With Annie, I still haven't seen any major red flags. I think it's highly unlikely that she is a narcissist. The way she reacts to Mao's behavior towards her is just not in line with how a narcissist would generally behave. Mao is continuing to show a wide range of different red flags. I think it's extremely likely that he is a narcissist, and actually a very obvious narcissist. Thank you for watching. Please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe.